Guys, welcome back to another video from Hoops Empire. In today's video, we're going to be doing a long breakdown on not just the current state of the Boston Celtics, but also the past and future of the organization, and detailing just how long this title window might be compared to what many think. Before we get into the video, I just want to take a moment to thank you all for that long-awaited 1,000 subscriber mark. It may not seem like a lot, but it is a goal that I have had in mind for over 2 years now. These past couple months, I have seen insane and exponential growth on the channel, and it means a lot knowing that my hard work is paying off, and people are enjoying the content that I'm putting out. I put hours of work into these videos, so thank you. The next goal is 5,000, and I hope we can hit it by this time next year with enough effort and support from me and you. So thank you for taking the time to watch, and if you enjoy what you see, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, turn on that notification bell, and like the video. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. The last time the Boston Celtics won the championship, I was almost too young to remember. But seeing the Kevin Garnett "anything is possible" speech lit a spark of interest that hasn't died since. As a Celtics fan, I have just wanted to enjoy one finals run in its entirety. And while that hasn't happened yet, the current state of the team leads me to believe that a title run could be imminent. Through the wizardry of Danny Ainge, the Boston Celtics were able to acquire a truckload of draft picks from the Brooklyn Nets, in exchange for a heavily declining Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. This did not benefit the Celtics immediately, nor did it the Nets, who proceeded to lose both Garnett and Pierce that next season, now having no future draft capital and no current players. Danny Ainge had single-handedly ruined the future of an organization. We will eventually get into how that team is better than Boston now, but don't worry, I didn't forget. After the Garnett and Pierce deal, the Celtics fell into a very short rebuilding period. 2013-14 Celtics were led by a player who is currently a 6th or 7th man in the NBA, Jeff Green. But just a season later, the Celtics' fate changed for the better when they acquired the man, the myth, Isaiah Thomas, at the trade deadline in exchange for Marcus Thornton and a first. Isaiah led the Celtics in scoring in his first season in Boston, averaging 19 points and 5 assists. They did end up getting swept in the first round by the Cavaliers and LeBron James in his inaugural return to Cleveland season. However, giving away your 2 core superstars and only having a 1-year playoff buffer is pretty impressive. Sadly, the 2015-16 season saw a similar first-round exit, but this time to the iconic Atlanta Hawks squad that had 4 All-Stars. All reserves, but nevertheless 4 All-Star players. However, fan favorite Isaiah Thomas showed that he is here to stay. People really started to love him. He was the 60th pick, under 6 feet, and was the sole proprietor of the grit and grind persona that the Celtics would acquire under his tenure. The 2016-17 Celtics clearly took those consecutive playoff exits as fuel, as they exploded onto the scene and became the #1 seed, behind now MVP candidate Isaiah Thomas. Thomas averaged an insane 29 points per game, as well as 6 assists per game, on 46% from the field, 38% from deep, and 91% from the free throw line. This season was also highlighted by the free agent signing of Al Horford, the first big-name free agent the Celtics had gotten in a long time. But Thomas single-handedly made the Boston Celtics an important and relevant team again, drastically shortening that rebuilding window, as that season was the first season Boston had the Brooklyn pick in the draft, landing California star Jaylen Brown with the 3rd pick. He had earned Pac-12 Freshman of the Year honors at Cal as a true freshman. The Celtics loved the upside that he had. However, he was supposed to be a pretty major prospect, as he was a pretty awful shooter coming out of the draft, as well as a bad off-the-dribble creator. In fact, in his freshman season at Cal, he ranked 149th in scoring efficiency out of the 173 players that used at least 17 possessions per game to create off the dribble. So he was not entirely effective, to say the least, but Boston had bigger picture in mind. He had an okay shot, but he shot differently every time, and Boston was confident that with a shooting coach, this was something they could fix. And if that is coupled with his uber-athletic ability, Ainge thought he could even end up being a steal at that 3rd pick. And right he was, as in his rookie season, albeit on low volume, he shot 34% from deep. Not amazing, but pretty significantly better than his Cal year. He was not a massive contributor year 1, as he only averaged 6.6 points per game on 17 minutes a night, but he showed flashes. But that postseason, the Celtics had one of the most heartfelt playoff runs ever. One of the biggest tragedies in league history struck when Isaiah Thomas lost his sister China in a horrific car accident, one day before the 2016-17 playoffs. No one expected Isaiah Thomas to play, and everyone understandably knew this Cinderella season would be coming to its end. But Thomas didn't let that happen. He dedicated the run to her, and played in a game just one day after her death. Even though they lost that first game, they ended up winning that first series. And even though Thomas was not there mentally, his play on the court was still at an all-time high. On his late sister's birthday, he gave the Celtics one of the best postseason games in franchise history, when he scored a staggering 53 points in a battle-it-out overtime win. It was absolutely exhilarating to watch, and it is a night that not a single Boston fan will ever forget. They would go on to win that series as well, before Thomas went down with an injury that resulted in an Eastern Conference Finals loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The next season was one that began a new era in Boston. Over the summer, the Celtics pulled off the Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving swap. Kyrie was not happy playing next to LeBron and wanted his own team. Isaiah, on the other hand, was not thrilled about the move, but understood that it was a business. It was a tough pill to swallow, and it hurt knowing everything IT did for this city, but it's the NBA, and moves are made. If the Celtics had stayed loyal to an injured Isaiah Thomas, who knows where they would be now. The Celtics also managed to land big-name free agent Gordon Hayward, a former Butler buddy of then-coach Brad Stevens. It was also the second year of the Brooklyn pick, but this year, the Celtics acquired the #1 pick in the NBA draft lottery. Most felt the consensus pick was Markelle Fultz, but clearly, Ainge felt a different way. I would be lying if I said I hadn't thought Fultz was the pick, but I did like Jason Tatum as a prospect, and clearly, Celtics staff did too. They eventually traded that #1 pick and gave it to the 76ers in return for the 3rd pick in the draft. With the first 2 picks being all but locked in, Ainge knew he could get his guy at 3 and add another pick to the treasure chest. So now, the Celtics had just made the Eastern Conference Finals the year prior, but now added Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, as well as trading a declining Avery Bradley for Marcus Morris, who revitalized his career in Boston, as well as selecting one of the top prospects from the 2017 draft on top of another top 3 pick the year before. The future was looking nearly blinding, it was so bright. That was until opening night of the 2017-18 season. 5 minutes into his first action in green, Gordon Hayward had one of the most infamous and unforgettable injuries in NBA history, where he completely snapped his ankle. There was no returning from that. It was the type of injury you see and know he's done, possibly even for his career. So after an off-season of championship hype, that bright light died out just minutes into the season. However, the Celtics players picked up Hayward's production, and Jason Tatum had a standout rookie season, averaging 14 points and 5 rebounds on 43% from deep on an all-rookie first-team campaign. Kyrie Irving seemed a genuine unselfish player, having what many deemed a career year, dishing out assists and scoring on career high efficiency. Jaylen Brown also exponentially improved his production, more than doubling his statistics from his rookie year, averaging 14 and 5 as well, but shooting over 39% from deep on 4 attempts per game. Jaylen Brown becoming an elite three-point shooter just 2 years into his career on top of his slashing ability is exactly what Ainge and company had hoped for. And they only had to wait 1 season for it to come into full effect. The team looked great, and it ended the season 55-27, the 2nd seed in the East even without Hayward playing all year. However, late into the season, the same knee that Kyrie had issues with in Cleveland started acting up. He left the Celtics game against Indiana on March 11th early, and little did the Celtics know this would be the last time he would suit up in the 2017 season, including the playoffs. This was obviously a major blow to the team. They were going into the playoffs as a 2 seed, but without their 2 best players in Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. They knew they were going to need increased production from someone, whoever it may be, and that they got. Jason Tatum bumped his scoring average up to 18.5, Brown to 18, Rozier to 16.5, and Horford to 16. And the Celtics got on a roll. In the first round versus Giannis and the Bucks, they went all the way to 7 games in a very fun series. This is the first series that Tatum and Brown truly cemented themselves as a legit duo, partly because it was quite literally their first playoff series played together, but it goes to show how well they performed. In the Bucks series, they averaged a combined 32 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists, but it was truly the combined 72 from Tatum, Horford, and Rozier in Game 7 that sealed the deal. In that next series versus Philly, it was all-around domination, as the Celtics made light work of the 76ers in a gentleman's sweep. So now, the Boston Celtics, again, sans Hayward and Irving, 2 all-star caliber players, are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Many chalked it up to a Cinderella story, in that they would be dominated by the experience and the physicality of LeBron James with a finals berth on the line. However, this was not the case, as that series as well went to 7 games. This series was a true coming out party for both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but more so, cementing Tatum's run as one of the best from a rookie of all time. He averaged 18 points on 50% from the field, 35% from 3, and 87% from the line in a series going up against one of the greatest to ever do it. This includes an unforgettable 24-point, 7-rebound performance in Game 7, highlighted by the dunk heard round the world. One plastered all over television, newspapers, phone cases, you name it. Sadly, the Celtics fell just 8 points short of dethroning LeBron James. Jason Tatum and Al Horford combined for 41 points on 55% from the field, but it was an absolute disaster class showing from the rest of the team. Said team being Rozier, Morris, Brown, Smart, and Baines combined for just 38 points on 13 of 56 from the field, low-lighted by a 2 of 14 performance from Rozier, including 0 for 10 from 3. That is just absolutely inexcusable play for 2 players to outscore the rest of a team with a measly number such as 41. It was a tough night for the Celtics fans, as it was so attainable to make the finals, yet it never really felt in grasp. However, there were things to look forward to. The Boston Celtics, led by their 2 top 3 draft picks, no older than 20 years old, had just pushed LeBron James to a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals, with poor performances from other teammates and without their 2 true star players. At this point, all Celtics fans were convinced they would be in the finals the next year, and rightfully so. But in short, the 2018-19 season did not go as planned. The team started 10-10, and from then on, it was all ups and downs. Starting on the Hayward front, he finally returned from injury, and despite playing over 26 minutes per night, while hardly missing games, he did not even touch the 20-point mark in a game until 2 months into the season. He was off, looked timid, his shooting stroke was gone, shooting sub 30% from deep, and that was a consistent theme with Hayward for that entire season. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were both having semi-down years, and later it came out that they were quite unhappy with Stevens for playing Hayward as much as he did. They felt as if Stevens was giving preferential treatment to Hayward, and way too much benefit of the doubt, having known him for so long and coaching him at Butler. But there are 2 sides to that coin. For one, Hayward is on max money, and obviously, the Celtics needed to have him operating at full capacity, and the best way to do that is with game reps. On the flip side, both Tatum and Brown were clearly better than Hayward at that point. For the team's sake, they would have been better off giving the Jays the majority of Hayward's minutes, but obviously that wasn't happening either. So that was another issue in a tumultuous season. However, that season was headlined by the saga of one man, Kyrie Irving. Before the season actually started, Kyrie came out in front of a full Boston crowd and told him if they would have him back, that he would love to re-sign in Boston long term. That was something to look forward to as a Celtics fan. However, as the season progressed, that promise looked less and less likely, especially when Irving said, "Ask me July 1st, when asked to clarify his statements about re-signing with the team. Then there was the All-Star Game debacle, where Kyrie Irving was videotaped seemingly saying 2 max spots to Kevin Durant. Of course, Irving denied all allegations, but we know exactly what happened after that offseason. He stopped doing things for others, and just for himself and his family. He clearly had no interest in the media's games, in storylines, or responsibilities other than to what truly matters. a weird season to say the least, the Celtics bounced back with a Kemba Walker signing. I can't lie, I liked it when it was announced, but eventually I realized that it was a saving face signing. A move to divert attention away from the embarrassing losses of their former All-Stars in Irving and Horford to Brooklyn and Philly respectively. Kemba was never much of a playmaker, and the Celtics could have been better suited looking elsewhere than a direct Kyrie playstyle replacement. On a bright note, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum truly did take that leap to stardom. Tatum in his age 21 season and Brown in his age 22 season were both viable All-Star candidates, with just Tatum making it, but Brown having a career season as well. Jaylen averaged 20 points and 6 rebounds on a career-high 58% true shooting. Tatum averaged 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists on over 40% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. However, Tatum got off to a slow start, but post-All-Star break, he averaged an insane 30 points on well above average 60% true shooting. He truly was taking a leap from role player to superstar in the span of one season. But then, the pandemic struck, and on March 12th, the NBA season was suspended indefinitely. No one knew for how long, but the league eventually returned with a bubble style of play, and the Celtics finally resumed action in late July. In the playoffs, the Celtics managed to make it all the way to the Eastern Finals again, and Celtics fans hoped they could make it to the finals this time, being originally favored to beat the Miami Heat. However, they could not get it done, and ended up losing to Miami in 6 games. And now, in the 2020-21 NBA season, the Celtics massively struggled. A season highlighted by health and safety protocols, the Celtics finished in the play-in tournament as the 7th seed, with a disappointing 36-36 500 record. The Celtics led the league in days in the COVID protocols by over 40, headlined by the infection of Jason Tatum. Before Tatum came down with COVID, he was averaging 27 points and 7 rebounds, as well as 4 assists, and the Celtics were 8-3 and the first seed in the Eastern Conference. But then, he went down for 2 weeks, and even when he came back, he was off until the All-Star break, complaining of breathing troubles and saying he had to use an inhaler but never did before. The season was also headlined by the lackluster and inconsistent play of Kemba Walker, who didn't play back-to-backs and still missed other games on top of that. The Celtics were just an injured mess all season, on top of the fact that they were one of the worst passing teams in the entire NBA. It was just a poorly constructed team. No one was playing for each other, and they had about as much poor luck as you could get. Jaylen Brown was diagnosed with a torn wrist ligament late into the season, and that put a cap on his season. So going into the playoffs, the Celtics had Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and a collection of injured players and rookies with no playoff experience. And of course, as a perfect cap to an awful season, the Celtics, or should I say Jason Tatum, had to face the healthy title favorites in the Brooklyn Nets. Jason Tatum had been on a tear even through this series, scoring 50 in the one game that the Celtics stole from Brooklyn. But that 50-point game was his 4th 50-point game or more in a 20-game span. He was truly cementing himself as a superstar in the NBA, and he is truly the catalyst for the Boston Celtics if they ever wanted to be a title-contending team. After the Celtics were eliminated, they wasted no time to make major organizational changes, as Danny Ainge stepped down from that president of basketball operations spot, and 7-year coach Brad Stevens assumed the role. Within just weeks of this front office move, the Celtics swapped Kemba Walker for a friendly face in Al Horford. It gave the team more reliability in an injury-prone front court. Then, the Celtics traded for Josh Richardson for Moses Brown and the rest of the Hayward trade exception, and shortly after, Tristan Thompson shipped out in a 3-team trade that brought Chris Dunn and Bruno Fernando to Boston. Boston then got in on some free agency action by bringing back Enes Kanter and then acquiring possibly the steal of free agency in Dennis Schroeder, with just the taxpayer mid-level exception. This team is currently much better constructed than last year, and the team has some solid depth now. Pritchard and Nesmith have clearly taken a jump in confidence and production as we have seen in the Summer League. Obviously, it's not actual league play, but they look better than they did last season. If they can become serious contributors for Boston, more so than their respective rookie years, that will be massive for this team's depth and positional fluidity. Honestly, if I'm Boston, I would consider starting Aaron Nesmith this upcoming season. If he is truly this improved in his shooting consistency, ball handling, and off-the-dribble creation, he could be a perfect complement to both Tatum and Brown. Starting Nesmith allows you to succeed much more with a second unit, allowing it to be Schroeder, Richardson, Pritchard, and either Horford or Robert Williams, as well as Enes Kanter. But regardless of what Udoka wants to run, this team should be fairly set in terms of rotations. The team is undoubtedly deeper than last year, and that alone should help them fare very well in a deeper Eastern Conference. But I think people remember all the other outstanding circumstances surrounding the team, but fail to recall that Boston actually has a high-caliber all-star two-way wing duo, one of which being a borderline top 10 player in the NBA at 23 years old. Regardless, the Celtics will be in a good position, barring health issues of course. But where can they go from here, with the Nets seemingly locked in as favorites for the foreseeable future? Obviously, with the moves Boston has made this offseason, they have Smart, Robert Williams, Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, Chris Dunn, Bruno Fernando, and Enes Kanter expiring, as well as team options for Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, Romeo Langford, Grant Williams, and Carson Edwards. This means for the 2022-23 NBA season, they can easily get everyone off the team not named Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or Al Horford. However, Horford is only guaranteed $14.5 million compared to the $26.5 million that isn't guaranteed, and that can easily be waived and stretched over a 2 to 3 year period for a lower salary cap hit. As I have broken down many times, the team can create nearly $60 million in cap space, factoring in the new cap projections for next season. So obviously, Brad Stevens' plan is to have that cap flexibility to make a major splash in next year's free agency. And I don't want to sound like a broken record here because it is fairly obvious, but why would you realistically be shooting for tens and tens of millions of dollars to spend if it isn't for that third star, being Washington's Bradley Beal? I used to not be an advocate for the signing because of the necessary roster gutting that would precede. However, with the new cap projections, they could possibly retain Robert Williams, Peyton Pritchard, and Aaron Nesmith, as well as obtain Bradley Beal. Working off that core six going into free agency may not be that bad with the improvement we might see from the Jays and those second-year guys. We are now entering year one of the combined extension years between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, as Tatum's extension year kicks in this year. This means Brown is on contract through the 2023-24 season, and Tatum is on contract through the 2025-26 season. Obviously, anyone can ask for a trade if they want to, but strictly talking about contractual obligation, there is only 3 seasons with both Tatum and Brown on contract. If moves aren't made to truly make this team a contender, who knows if Brown will want to stay? And if Brown doesn't, who's to say Tatum stays a few years later? Just based off what's given, this window is not nearly as long as people like to make it seem because of their youth. I do believe them when they say they want to be Boston Celtics for life, but feelings can always change. I'm not sure how many bridge years the Celtics can afford before things really go south, but whatever the Celtics do decide to do, I do not want to sound like a pessimist, as many are in Boston. I firmly believe in this team. I believe in the Jays, and I believe they want to be Boston Celtics for life. But it is also true that nothing is guaranteed in the NBA, and Boston management needs to do everything that they can to put bona fide talent around their 2 stars to make it in this league. The Celtics are a storied franchise, one of rings and stars, and the Celtics have 2 more stars brewing under their watch right now, and regardless, it should be fun to see. So, thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. This video has been in the works for a long time now, and hours of work have gone into it. But it is completely worth it. I owe it to you guys for helping me to get where I am now. So again, thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the future of the Celtics, and make sure to subscribe. The next goal is 5,000. And turn on the notification bell, but most importantly, have a good one.